Hello, my name is Thomas Kirkby, a third-year student at DBS Bristol, and my artist name is High Moments. This is a video that will take you on a journey through my process of developing a generative instrument using Max 8. For this project, we were tasked with stepping outside of our comfort zone, something for me which I had to think quite thoroughly about, as I wanted it to be both personal to me and beneficial to my musical journey. An area I personally struggle with is that of perfectionism, and I often retract my projects due to the need to constantly tweak and alter minuscule details until I eventually just throw them away. This project aims to step away from the fear of the final output and focus more on the intricacies involved within the process. Furthermore, by placing emphasis on the element of chance, the resulting output is something which will be out of my control. If you'd asked me at the start of university if I'd be doing this for one of my final projects, my answer probably would have been no chance. But for some reason I've taken a really big shine into this, and I'm just really enjoying the process that it brings. Sometimes I spend a couple of hours, maybe even days, just trying to fix one sort of small problem, but that actually really helps me step away from the fears that I usually have revolving around music. So I really hope you enjoy this documentary style video, which documents the process of designing this instrument and taking it to Llyn Y Fan Fach to play this song live. So a little bit of a backstory in terms of why this instrument is being developed. I currently live in a very small village in the Welsh countryside called Tredigga, which is a stone's throw away from the Brecon Beacons. Every summer we have our spots that we like to go to on the rare occasion that the sun comes out, and one of these places is a lake called Llyn Y Fan Fach. A couple of years ago, when I took a visit to this place with some friends, one of the friends told me about a Welsh folklore story that was based around this lake. Then, when we were given the brief for this module, I started thinking about how I could bring this Welsh folklore story to life. Through my research, I then found endless amounts of stories of different Welsh folklore tales, and through the completion of this module, I've now started to think that it would be quite fun to do this for other Welsh folklore stories. So the name of this Welsh folklore story is The Lady of the Lake. This will be explained in greater detail further on in the video. So this is now a snippet of one of the live performances that I did at Llyn Y Fan Fach. The instrument I'm using, that I've created, I'll explain later on in the video. The way this essentially works is that the microphone stood next to me is receiving a live incoming audio signal, and the instrument I've created is translating that into a generative composition. I'm then using my MIDI controllers to control this and perform live.
Mae Llyn Y Fan Fach wedi gosod yn ddyfn yng nghalon mynyddoedd Cymru, gyda'i ddŵr tawel yn adlewyrchu amrywiaethau'r awyr fel manifesto fyw. Ond, o dan ei wyneb, mae cyfrinach, stori wedi hudo mewn dychymyg ac wedi gau i'r diwedd. Yn chwedl, clywed llefain am fenyw y llun, delwedd o harddwch ysbrydol sy'n dod allan o'r wawr y dydd, ei chôr yn llifo gyda golau'r bore. Mae rai yn parchu hi fel ysbryd gwarchodol, tra bod eraill yn sôn am ein nerth hudol y tu hwnt I ddeall dynol. Mae cyfarfyddiadau â hi yn bryn, fel sibrwd ar y gwynt gan adael y rhai ffodus ddarn o drwydded. Ond mae stori arall wedi hamgau gyda'r chwedl hon, un sy'n datblygu ger pentref Myddfai, lle mae dyn ifanc yn borthu fichedd wrth ochr y llyn. Un diwrnod, mae'n cyfarfod â gwraig hudolus yn dod allan o'i ddyfnion. Maent yn priodi a chyfoeth yn dilyn, ond mae amod yn cynnig dros ei undod. Ni ddylai'r dyn ifanc taro hi dri gwaith. Mae'n torri ei pact gyda tri ergyd, gan arwain at ddychweliad tebygol I fenyw i'r llun, gan arwyddo diwedd ei llwyddiant. Ac felly, mae echos ei stori yn ysteinio drwy dyffrynnoedd Cymru, sibrwd gan y gwynt ac wedi ormesu yn ddyfnion Llyn Y Fan Fach. Stori o gariad ac adferiad wedi ei chwasgu I fewn I waed gwerthfawr y wlad. Ond, fel pob chwedl o ryfeddod, mae chwedl fenyw y llun yn cario rybydd. Ymgolli I ni fod harddwch y byd naturiol yw ganmol a'i barchu. Byddwn yn dal sylwi ein bod yn cael ein chynrwg gan rymoedd llawer mwy na'n hunain.
Okay, so now we're inside the instrument I've created using Max 8. The premise of this instrument is to receive a live incoming signal from a microphone and then use that signal to create a randomly generated composition. So if I go into the edit screen of this, the first process is this up here called filters. This is where the microphone signal is received and it's split into three areas. As you can see, we've got a low pass, band pass and a high pass. This signal then goes through this process here called peak amp, and this takes the average amplitude of the signal and translates that into a number. This is then received in this area here called peak amplitudes, which takes the signal and sends it through various multiplications and then sends it out through separate sends, as you can see at the bottom here. After this process, if I was to go into any of the instruments, for example the harp, one of these numbers is being received. This instrument has been created using buffers, where I've recorded an octave's worth of samples ranging from C to C. I've then taken these samples and separated them into order of the keys, so you can see that we've got major and minor, and then I'm using a gate to select the key. If I was to go into one of these keys here, I've used the select object, and this assigns a number to trigger the sample. Inside some of the instruments, for example this one here, the bass, I'm taking the outgoing signal and I'm sending it through this gate at the bottom here. Inside this gate I use peak amp to take the average amplitude of the signal, and it's being sent to this area here at the top. This is then sent through another gate, and this gate is configured to close if it's receiving an incoming signal, meaning two notes cannot be played at the same time. Once the note finishes, the gate will then reopen and allow another note through. These instruments then run through a series of effects, which you can see I've got here. We've got gain functions, a panning tool, a filter, EQ, delay, reverb, and then a second low pass. One of the issues I then faced was that the panning tool wasn't efficient enough for what I needed, so you can then see the signal runs into this panning subpatch. This subpatch receives the live MIDI CC information from my controller, and you can see that when I assign this to knob 1, the left and right channel alternate respectively, giving a panning effect. I then take the CC and send it through scale functions, and these sliders underneath represent the gain for the left and right channel. And when I use the CC, it ever so slightly turns the volume down on either side, which then fixed the problem that I was facing with the panning tool. Following this, the signal then runs through a left and right channel gain, and then into a soft clipper, and finally to the output. Another area of interest is this instrument here, the sound effects, which uses a poly buffer, and this can read an entire folder's worth of samples, so I've loaded in one of my field recording folders. You can see at the top here that this takes one of the peak amplitude values, and it's then sent through this if function, and if the number lands between these two figures, then the trigger will turn on. This in turn will then activate the sampler. Also, this amplitude value being received is sent through various divisions, and these values are being used to alternate the ADSR. Furthermore to this instrument, in the effects section here, I'm taking that same amplitude value, dividing it by 2, and using it to randomize the panning. Over here, I've created this instrument. You've got a drop-down menu, and you can select one of the various instruments that I've created. This is triggered using a contact microphone. In the patcher here, I've got this threshold reader, which translates the transients into numbers. This signal then further passes through a gate, which selects the key. Each element of this gate has a message at the bottom, which is the MIDI value of the notes within that key. This number is then sent through a scramble, which is used to randomize the output of these samplers. At the top here, we've got the key selector, and this is set by selecting the time of day, the date, and the weather. Behind all of these selections is a number. This then goes through to the key decider, in which these values are sent through various multiplications. This then determines a value, and the value is then sent through an if function. And if the number lands between these two numbers here, then a bang will be sent. This bang will then be sent through its respective channel, and this will be used to inform the instruments of which key to select. Another area of interest, and one which I'm pretty proud of, is this section down here called MIDI controllers. The MIDI controllers that I have are these two here, this Akai and Korg pad control, and I actually found that the functions these have were not enough for what I needed when I was playing this live. So within the subpatcher, I've taken the MIDI CC information from these controllers and I've sent them out through various channels. These sends are then received in this area here called MIDI mapping, in which you can see that I've set up a number of various gates, which are set up in a way, for example, if the Korg pad 1 was to be triggered, this gate then opens. If I was to then move to my Akai controller, you can see that when I move the first knob, it will only affect the first gate. And by using these gates, originally I have 8 functional MIDI CC knobs on my controller. At the top here, I've got Korg pad 1 to 10, and this results in me having 80 functional MIDI CC knobs on my controller. Following this, I then found a couple of issues with my controller. For example, if I was to initiate the harp and turn the volume up, and then move to the whistle and turn the volume to a different figure, when I then moved back to the harp, this number would then jump to what it was set for the whistle. So to then counteract this, in this subpatcher down here called Akai routing, I've got a knob recalibration, and this is actually very CPU intensive, so I'm not sure it's going to work, but hopefully. So within this subpatcher, I've separated each of these 18 new MIDI CC controls, and if I was to select Korg pad 1 and then move the Akai controller, both of these sliders go up. The way this is designed is that this first slider is a direct representation of where the knob currently is, and then the second slider is a saved value of that figure. If I then move down and activated Korg pad 2 and move that same Akai knob, this one goes down, and at the top there you can also see that first slider moving. If I go back up, the first slider has moved down, whereas the second slider has saved its position. If I was to then re-enable Korg pad 1 and start to move that same knob, the second slider will only move when the first catches up to it. Following this, these are then sent through sends for the last time, and these are used to automate various parameters within the plugin. Regarding CPU, I'll make an attempt to scroll down on this page to show you the amount of wiring that was needed for this. However, there is a possibility this might crash my computer, so we'll see. I'm sure there's faster ways of doing this, but yeah. So a couple more things which emphasize the presentation view of the plugin. I've got these P controls littered around, which open various subpatches within the instrument. And I've also created a master preset, which I can select on the main screen. You can see here the figures that are used to determine some of the values, and then this drop down is used on the presentation screen. So back to the presentation view, I've got all of these parameters stored in a way that is easy to access. Through testing in different environments, one of the issues I faced was that the audio signal coming in varied quite drastically. So this prompted me to create this section up here, in which this is the multiplication used to determine the value of the amplitude, and then you can best set this figure to match the value needed for the instruments to play. Underneath you can see these figures here, and these represent the numbers for the peak amplitudes. So if I was to actually take one of these figures and lower it, the amplitude speeds up, which in turn can then speed up the response time of the instruments. So yeah, thank you for watching the video and following me on this journey through the development of the plugin and recording this song. My name is High Moments. Thank you.